It's always the same, year after year. I walk into my parents' house for another family dinner, and I already know what's coming. The smiles, the forced pleasantries, the thinly veiled judgments. They don't know what's about to happen. My name is Lily Carter, and for years, I've been the one they look down on. But tonight, everything changes. As I entered the house, I was greeted with a mixture of warmth and a subtle air of superiority. Ethan, my older brother, was sitting on the couch, his typical smirk already in place. The golden child. The one who never had to work as hard as me to get ahead. "Still running that little business of yours, Lily?" he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "You should really think about doing something bigger, you know. Or are you just happy with scraping by?" I could feel the blood rushing to my face, but I kept my composure. I'd been hearing this for years. Ethan was always the one who had it easy. He had the career that made everyone proud. He had the job, the lifestyle, the accolades. And me? I was still stuck in a tiny apartment, running my own marketing agency, trying to make ends meet. To them, I was just the dreamer, the underachiever, who couldn't get her life together. But what they didn't know was that I wasn't just surviving. I had been thriving. And it was about time they saw the truth. I took a deep breath and sat down at the table. The same table where I had spent countless dinners, enduring their mockery in silence. Mom walked in with a forced smile, her eyes flicking briefly over to me. She joined in with Ethan's mocking tone, her words cutting through the air like sharp knives. "You're still living in that little place? Don't you want something more, Lily? Maybe it's time to grow up, don't you think?" I could feel the weight of their words pressing down on me, but I couldn't let them see how deeply it hurt anymore. Not tonight. Not after everything I had done. I had been working in silence for years, quietly building a marketing agency from the ground up, while they laughed behind my back. All the while, they thought I was just getting by. I wasn't just another employee or another dreamer anymore. I was my own boss, and I had built something worth millions. As if the night hadn't been enough, my younger sister, Chloe, chimed in from across the table, giggling like the family's little darling. "Honestly, Lily, you should just take a page out of Ethan's book. He's got everything figured out. You could be doing so much more if you just tried harder," she said, her voice dripping with that well-meaning but cutting kind of concern that only someone who'd never been in your shoes could muster. The laughter that followed stung more than usual. But I wasn't going to react. I wasn't going to let them see how their words still held power over me. This time, I was going to do something different. I had been waiting for the perfect moment to show them that I wasn't just the poor little sister anymore. They were about to see the woman I had become. I stood up slowly, feeling their eyes on me. "Actually," I said, my voice steady but colder than I intended, "I'm not just running a business." The room went quiet. Even Ethan stopped smirking. "I'm running a multi-million-dollar agency, and soon, I'll be expanding further than any of you could imagine." The shock on their faces made my heart race, but I stood firm. Tonight wasn't just about proving a point, it was about reclaiming my place in this family, and I wasn't going to let them tear me down anymore. The silence was deafening, and as I watched them process my words, I knew that from this moment forward, they would never see me the same way again. After my revelation at the family dinner, the silence in the room was unbearable. I could feel the weight of their disbelief hanging in the air, but I didn't flinch. It was time for them to understand that I wasn't the same person they'd always dismissed. I wasn't their poor little sister anymore. I was a woman who had built something from the ground up, and now the truth had finally come to light. But what they didn't know, what I hadn't told them, was just how far I'd come. They had no idea how close I was to achieving everything they thought I could never do. For years, I had been living in the shadows of their expectations, working tirelessly on my marketing agency while keeping my success hidden from them. It wasn't that I was ashamed of what I had accomplished. On the contrary, I was proud. But I wanted to prove something not just to them, but to myself. I wanted to show them that I could succeed on my own terms, without their approval. I had worked so hard to build something that mattered, and I wanted the moment I revealed it to be unforgettable. The truth was, I had been silently making moves for years. I started my agency when I was in my late 20s, with nothing but a few clients and a dream. It wasn't easy. I faced rejection, financial struggles, and long sleepless nights. But every challenge only pushed me to work harder, to prove to myself that I could do this. I didn't have the luxury of a safety net or the connections that Ethan or Chloe had, but what I had was grit and determination, and that was enough. By the time I reached my late 30s, my agency was thriving. We had expanded into digital marketing, launched several successful campaigns for high-profile clients, and my reputation in the industry was growing. But I never shared that with my family. They still saw me as the same girl who couldn't figure things out, the one who had to settle for a small apartment in the suburbs. They had no idea that I was now handling multi-million-dollar contracts and dealing with the pressures of running a company that was on the verge of a major acquisition. It was only when the opportunity of a lifetime came knocking that I realized how much I had truly accomplished. A Fortune 500 company reached out with an offer to buy my agency. The deal would set me up for life more than I ever dreamed of. But the moment that made me realize just how far I had come wasn't the offer itself. It was the fact that I was in complete control. This wasn't a fluke. This wasn't a stroke of luck. It was the culmination of years of hard work, sacrifice, and self-belief. And now, I had everything I needed to prove that I wasn't the same person they had mocked for so long. The only thing left to do was show them. I knew that if I walked away from this deal, I could easily slip back into the background of their lives. But I didn't want to do that anymore. I was ready to claim my place, not just in the family, but in the world. So, when I walked out of that dinner, I knew it wasn't just about the deal with the Fortune 500 company. It was about something far more important, my own personal triumph. I was finally ready to stop hiding and let them see who I had truly become. I wasn't just surviving, I was succeeding, and I was about to change everything. I could feel it in my bones. The moment of truth was coming, and nothing would ever be the same again. The night after the family dinner, I couldn't stop replaying the look on their faces when I revealed the truth about my success. I had expected some disbelief, maybe even mockery, but the stunned silence that followed was something I hadn't anticipated. Ethan's cocky grin faltered for the first time in years, and my parents, who had always been so quick to criticize me, sat there speechless. I knew I had them, but the real challenge was yet to come. I had done what I set out to show them that I was no longer the person they thought I was. But now, I needed to make sure they understood the full scope of what I had accomplished. The next morning, I woke up early, my phone buzzing with a few missed messages. It was from my lawyer confirming the acquisition deal. I read it through twice, making sure the terms were locked in. My company, my hard work, was finally being valued at the level I'd dreamed of. This was it. The confirmation that my agency was now worth millions. The thought sent a surge of pride through me, but there was something more urgent pressing at the back of my mind. It was time to show my family exactly how serious I was about all of this. By the time I met them for lunch a few days later, I felt strangely calm. My family was still in shock from the dinner, and I knew they wouldn't expect me to show up with anything more than empty words. But I was done with words. I was done with letting them see me as the little sister who always needed rescuing, always striving for their approval. Now, I was the one with the power. As I walked into the restaurant, I could see Ethan and my father sitting at the table, their faces tight with tension. They clearly weren't expecting this meeting, and neither of them seemed prepared for what was about to unfold. Chloe, as usual, sat quietly, her eyes darting between us as if she couldn't decide whose side to take. It didn't matter. I wasn't there to win them over. I was there to finish what I had started. "Sit down, Lily," my father said curtly, not even bothering to look up from his menu. It was his usual tone-distant, dismissive, but this time, it didn't bother me. I wasn't going to let his coldness get to me. I sat down, my back straight, eyes steady. "What's this about?" I asked, my voice calm but sharp. "We need to talk," my father began, his voice laced with frustration. "We know things got out of hand the other night, but we just want to understand." Why did you leave like that? My mother jumped in, her voice softer now, trying to play the mediator. We didn't mean to hurt you, Lily. We've always wanted what's best for you. We're just worried. She wasn't fooling me anymore. They didn't care about what was best for me. They cared about maintaining control, about keeping me in the position they had always imagined for Meath failure, the one they could rescue. But I wasn't that person anymore. I couldn't hold back any longer. You want to understand? Fine, I said, my voice growing colder. You've never seen me for who I really am. You've never seen me as anything more than the girl you could push around. But I'm done with that. I'm not the poor little sister you thought I was. I've built something far bigger than any of you could ever imagine. I reached into my bag and pulled out the acquisition offer. This is what I've been working on all these years. It's not a dream anymore. It's real. I slid the document across the table to them. The shock on their faces was priceless. My father's expression hardened, while Ethan just stared at me, speechless for the first time I could remember. I wasn't done yet. You all laughed at me. You thought I'd fail. You thought I was the underachiever. But here's the truth. My business is worth millions now, and I'm about to sell it to a Fortune 500 company. The deal is done. I paused, letting the words sink in. The silence that followed felt heavy, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the silence of realization. They finally understood that I wasn't the same person they had always underestimated. My father finally looked at me, his voice tight. We didn't know, Lily. We didn't know you had come this far, but I wasn't interested in apologies. You didn't know because you never cared to ask. You never saw me for who I really am, I replied quietly, standing up. But now you will. I looked around the table one last time, feeling a strange sense of closure. They didn't need to say anything more. The tables had turned, and this time, it was my turn to walk away, head held high. As I left the restaurant, I could feel their eyes on me, but this time, it didn't matter. They were left in the dust, scrambling to understand how they had failed to see me for who I truly was. I had finally taken control, and the next chapter of my life was just beginning. After the lunch meeting, I left the restaurant feeling oddly satisfied, but I knew it wasn't over. Not yet. I had dropped the bombshell, and now the aftermath was beginning. My family was scrambling, trying to regain their footing, but they had no idea what was coming next. They weren't just shocked by the acquisition deal or the success I had achieved. They were terrified by one thing, the power I now held. And that fear had already started to seep into their actions. The phone calls started almost immediately. My parents, Ethan, even Chloe all tried to reach me. At first, it was simple texts. Casual attempts to explain themselves, to ask for clarity. Lily, we need to talk, my father's message said. Don't shut us out, my mother's read. But there was no real apology, no acknowledgement of how wrong they had been about me. Instead, it felt like an attempt to pull me back into the fold, to convince me that my success wasn't mine alone, that it belonged to the family. Ethan sent several texts, the tone shifting from his usual arrogant dismissal to something more desperate. He wanted to know how I had done it, what my big secret was. I didn't respond. Part of me wanted to lash out, to send him a message full of accusations, to make him feel the weight of his past comments. But I didn't need to. My success had already done all the talking for me. The calls kept coming, but I ignored them. I was focused on what I had to do next, finalizing the details of the sale, expanding my business plans, and thinking about how to strategically invest the new wealth I had gained. I was moving forward, and I wasn't looking back, but that didn't stop them from trying to get to me. After a few days, I couldn't ignore the constant barrage of messages. My father called me 3 times in a row, his frustration evident. Lily, please, we're just trying to understand, he said in a voicemail. Why are you pushing us away? We're your family. There it was, the familiar tone of manipulation. They thought they could guilt me into coming back, into conceding that they still had some control over me. But I wasn't going to fall for it again. Then came Chloe. She sent me a message that read, I know we've had our differences, but please, I'm worried about you. We miss you. That one got to me a little more. Chloe had always been the one to soften the harshness of Ethan and my parents. She had never been cruel to me, but she had always sided with them. I knew she didn't understand the full picture yet how deeply their judgment had affected me, how much their dismissal had hurt. But I wasn't about to explain that to her. Not now. She had to see it for herself. I decided it was time to meet them again, but this time I was going to call the shots. I arranged to meet my parents and Ethan at a coffee shop. I could feel the tension already building in the air. When I walked in, they were already waiting, their faces a mix of guilt and uncertainty. Ethan, as usual, was the first to speak. "Lily," he began, his voice a little more subdued than usual. "We didn't mean for things to get so out of hand. We're just trying to understand. This is a big change, and we're sorry if we didn't support you like we should have." I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I took a seat across from them, my coffee untouched. The silence stretched on, and I could see them squirming under the weight of the moment. My father's eyes flicked to Ethan, then back to me. "You know, we're a family," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "We should be able to talk about this, about the future." "You're right," I said finally, my voice calm but firm. "This is about the future, but it's not just about me. It's about how you all see me. For years, I've been the one you overlooked, the one you mocked. You thought I would never make it. You thought I would fail, but I didn't. I did it on my own, without any of you." The words hung in the air, and I could see Ethan's jaw tightening. He didn't like being confronted like this, didn't like the fact that I had turned the tables. "We're proud of you," Chloe finally spoke up, her voice small. "We just didn't know how to show it." I looked at her, really looked at her. "I didn't need you to show it. I needed you to believe in me. And you didn't. You didn't believe in me when it mattered." My father cleared his throat, looking defeated. "We were wrong, Lily, and I'm sorry. We just don't want to lose you." "You can't lose something you never really had," I said, standing up. "But you'll have to get used to the fact that I'm not coming back. Not to the person I used to be. Not to the family you thought I was. I've moved on, and I'm not waiting for any of you to catch up. I'm already living my future." As I walked out of the coffee shop, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel bitter, either. I felt free. Free from their expectations. Free from their need to control me. Free from the constant fight for their approval. They had tried to pull me back, to draw me into their web of guilt and manipulation. But I wasn't falling for it anymore. The tables had truly turned, and I was finally in control. The power I had quietly built was mine to keep, and there was nothing they could do about it now. I could feel the change in the air as soon as I walked out of that coffee shop. For the first time, I was completely free from the need for validation, free from the constraints of my family's expectations. They had tried to reel me back in with their guilt and apologies, but I had made my decision. I was moving forward with my life, and they would have to catch up. They were still trying to figure out how to navigate this new version of me, but I wasn't waiting for them anymore. A few days later, as I was wrapping up work for the day, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a text message or voicemail. It was from my lawyer, and it sent a jolt of anticipation through me. The deal with the Fortune 500 company had been finalized. My agency had been sold, and the funds were already being transferred. It wasn't just about the money, it was about proving once and for all that I had built something worth more than my family had ever believed. But there was one final piece to the puzzle. I had a few properties under my name, properties I had quietly invested in while running my agency. My family thought I had sold them years ago. They had no idea how much I had actually gained. I knew this was the final step. It was time to confront them again, but this time the stakes were higher. This wasn't just about proving my success. This was about showing them that their constant undermining had consequences. The roles had reversed, and I was no longer the one they controlled. Now, I was the one holding all the cards. I arranged another meeting with my parents and Ethan. This time, I didn't want a coffee shop or a public place. I chose my homey, newly renovated home, one of the properties I had kept hidden from them. The house was quiet, but it had an air of triumph to it, with its modern decor and open spaces. It was a stark contrast to the cramped apartment they had always seen me in. When they arrived, they looked uncomfortable, unsure of what to expect. Ethan, as usual, was the first to speak. "Lily, we've been thinking," he started, his tone defensive. "We didn't realize how much you had done. We're proud of you, really. But you have to understand, we're just concerned about you. You can't do this alone forever. We're your family, and we should be part of your success." The words felt rehearsed, forced. I looked at them, and for a moment, I considered explaining everything: the years of hard work, the sacrifices, the loneliness. But I realized they wouldn't understand. They were still stuck in the mindset that I needed them, that I needed to seek their approval to be successful. They were still trying to control the narrative. And that's when I decided it was time for the final revelation. I stood up and walked over to my desk, pulling out a legal folder I had prepared earlier. "This," I said, placing the folder in front of them, "is the deed to the properties you thought I sold. These aren't just real estate investments, Dad. They're part of the empire I've built. And the company that bought my agency? Well, they've also expressed interest in these properties. And guess what? I'm holding the contracts for that sale too." I watched as their faces drained of color, the realization slowly sinking in. Ethan's usual bravado melted away, and even my father seemed at a loss for words. I felt a strange satisfaction in that moment, not because I wanted to see them suffer, but because I had finally claimed my space. They couldn't ignore me anymore. They couldn't pretend I was the failure they always saw me as. I wasn't just financially secure, I was in control of my own future, and I was about to make sure they understood that. "It's time you understood, once and for all," I continued, my voice calm but firm, "that I don't need your approval. I don't need your validation. I've done this on my own, and I'm not going to let you pull me back into your world of manipulation and control." My father's eyes flicked to Ethan, and I could see the wheels turning in his mind. But it was too late. The tables had turned, and I wasn't about to hand them back the power they had always had over me. I turned to leave the room, but before I could walk away, I heard Ethan speak, his voice barely above a whisper. "You really think you can just cut us out like this?" I paused for a moment, my back still turned. "You've already done it yourself," I said quietly. "You pushed me away when I needed you the most. Now I'm the one in control. And you can't change that." As I walked out of the room, I could feel the weight of everything I had accomplished settling on my shoulders. This was it. I had finally done it. I had taken back my life, my success, and my power. My family's empire had been built on control, but I was the one holding the keys to the future now. I didn't need them to approve of me. I had built my own legacy, and nothing could take that away. They had underestimated me for far too long. And now, it was my turn to walk away, knowing that I had won.